Welcome, welcome. How are you? Just imagine, in times like these, we're gathered to celebrate the Word, to celebrate our spirits, and to celebrate ourselves. So thank you for coming out on a Saturday morning, which I'm sure most of us would probably just pull up the covers or would like to and just stay there, and sometimes just hide away, turn our eyes away, shut out all the horrible things in the world. But we're writers, and what we do is that we create a beautiful vehicle, a beautiful object in terms of our poetry, in terms of our books, to bring to the world. And the general idea is that we will labor in beauty, and we will labor and labor until beauty overloads the ugly and the evil. That's the world that we writers are aiming for. Yeah, so today we bring you a range of poetry, and we want you to hear from some of the deepest, the longest working poets, the flimsiest poets, the loudest poets. But what underscores all of this is the lovingest poets around. So, let me find my notes. See, they don't number. See, the thing about growing sagely is you get these things and it tells you the date, September 28th. So it takes another 5 minutes to figure out what day is that. And then you get these things and they don't have numbers on the page. So it takes you a while to figure out what are the numbers if you mix up the page and just to make sure they're there. So just the older artists, just say that. Yeah, but thank you for all the hard work, everybody, who made this festival happen and to bring it to our city, which is, what can I say, one of the best cities in the world, despite any complaints. Yeah. So, hello and welcome to Word on the Street. This is your stage, Vibrant Voices of Ontario, and we're sponsored by Ontario Creates. I'm your host, Lillian. Don't buy many things. The poet, writer, playwright, chatterbox, mentor, godmother of everything. I'm the city's current Poet Laureate. Number 7. So yeah. After this session, we have another session with 3 really distinguished poets, and I chose them for not only their poetry, but for how they make space for each other, opening up, connecting to each other, just making our city a more vibrant place. And for the younger poet, just that voice we haven't been hearing from in a long time, Danielle, but that's for the session after, so I want you to stay around for that one. Yeah. So I'd say thank you to our sponsors for this event, the City of Toronto, and here's representing the City of Toronto. For the generous contribution. Thanks also for Accessibility sponsor for this event, Queen's Book, for helping to ensure that Word on the Street is available to keep improving access to these programs, offerings every year. So before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the history of the place from which Word on the Street operates. The City of Toronto exists because of the Toronto Purchase, also known as Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation in 1805, with a final claim settlement in 2010. The territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon, One Pot Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit to care for and share the area around the Great Lakes in peace. 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 An agreement which we all now share responsibility in upholding. Please let us take that seriously in our hearts and in our deeds. The District One Spoon was born in part out of the Anishinaabe concept of all our relations, which centers the awareness that we are connected to and reflected in all the living and non-living beings around us. Toronto is now home for many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples with long histories on this land, and simply acknowledging this on its own is neither reconciliation nor decolonization. The word on the street also recognizes the organizational importance of policy program services and access that prioritize Indigenous artists and communities, and continues to look for ways to build on a practice of land stewardship and Indigenous solidarity and to support Indigenous sovereignty. I slipped that line in. And so with that, I'm going to be doing a 10-minute reading. And, at 9 minutes, you can just say, yeah, because, you give poets a mic, and they're going home with it. They're still reading poetry. The door's closing, and you're still reading, right? Because not just for you, it's for us. It's for the world, to send the words out there to vibrate in the universe. And we love that. This is a poem for Billie Holiday. This is a poem for Billie Holiday. Oh, Billie, you live in your drawers. I'm turning out of black. Rainbow splintering through deceptions of graves. Chernozym blues. So full of self, of music in your face. Proud. Passions burst into words, pride aches, heartbeat, and slow defiance, note by note, that's the swing converges. Louis Armstrong blowing language, breaking words apart, scattering soul all over art, all over American culture. Bill's lips giving shapes and hues to longings. Meditation of deep spirit on pain of being, elusive love, emotions in the blood, fire and history from the bones. Bill's voice, a poet's ease. Bill's voice, a poet's ease. Bill's voice, a poet's ease, and all that sass. Sass. This is a poem for Billie Holiday. And bring it to the stage, you'll get a chance to also ask questions. So formulate a question if you want, or make a comment. We're going to have a conversation afterwards. I want to introduce to you, and I want you to join me in welcoming I'm calling you AF, is that your official name?
Al.
Yeah. Moritz has written more than 20 books of poetry, most recently The Sparrow, As Far As You Know, and Great Silent Ballad. Al served as the 6th Poet Laureate of Toronto from March 2019 to May 2023. He also served for more than a decade as Golding Professor of the Arts and Society at Victoria University of Toronto, where he continues to inspire, supervise, and enrich students in their creative writing projects. All has received the Guggenheim Fellowship Inclusion in the Princeton Series of Contemporary Poets, the award in Literature of the American Academy and the Institutes of Arts and Letters, and the Ingram Merrill Fellowship. He's a 3-time nominee for the Governor General's Award for English Language Poetry, Rest on the Flight into Egypt, Sentinel, and New Measures. He was the winner of the Relay Award for Poetry in 2005 for Night Street Repairs, and his collection, Sentinel, a Globe and Mail Top 100 of the Year, won the 2009 Griffey Poetry Prize. So you think about it, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of poets. This is like achievement that is almost unachievable. So a lifelong of writing and giving to community, enriching our cultural ecology, our literacy, I present to you one of my favorite poets, Moritz. Yes.
Thanks a million, Lillian. That was great. I think I'll try to hook on to some of the things that Lillian was talking about. Mentioning beauty is good. That was a theme that was, in terms of that, was a theme that is, for me, permanent. But in terms of that particular word was really important there for maybe about 10 years. I haven't used it as much recently. But I think that one of the things that occurs to me from what Lillian said is the way, since poetry is made of words, not clay or stone or colors or forms, it automatically bears with it all of our concepts and everything that they come from and bear with them, which is the entire human world and our entire access to the whole natural world and whatever is spiritual or metaphysical world, including a lot of profound thoughts about it and a lot of errors. A lot of the profound thoughts have a lot of error. So the poem is unique in that it must make a beautiful object, not out of marble, which is beautiful itself, but out of this other kind of material. I think that's an important thing that isn't thought about enough. But in any case, in simple terms, we're always having to make beauty out of. Not good enough, this one? Okay, that's too bad. That's all right. This is better? Okay. Oh yeah, I can hear myself. That's dangerous, you don't want that. So you know, my poems are, always tend to involve that. So I'll read 3 poems, 2 of which have something to do with Toronto, and that'll be it, because I gave my little disquisition there. This is on a thought of Juan Ramon Jimenez, great Spanish poet of the first half of the century, Nobel Prize 1956. The thought is 3 lines from a poem by him, which starts my poem. And what difference does all of it make if, as fire, we can consume each pain and sorrow of passion in a star? And what difference does it make if my woods are cut and burning, if I arrive as fire in pure space? That my oceans, that my lake, that my narrow adolescent river sparkle with deception, infused poison, shining like water in the water reflecting heaven, where the raised oaks once leaned over. If I am a rose now without stem or earth, because my memory is a greater stem, transforming all it conveys as it feeds me from my former life, all fused into consciousness. And being is my true earth now, my only soil. If I remain then unchanging, blossoming, what difference does it make, the homeland I leave that freely promised me once it was just one step from Eden? Leave it on the roadside, a dank knot, a rind and rot, garbage in action. What difference does it make, the unemployed wife and husband dead of an overdose behind their steering wheel, their two toddlers crying in the back seat of their old Honda ticking by a ditch in my Arcady? What difference does it make that I have nothing to say to the one true radicalism, yours, Juan Ramon? Beauty alone, the root and the flower that are the fruit. Nothing to say to your rightness but these contrasts and comparisons between horror lived and the perfecting of the endless desire. This is a two-part poem about something that, you know, some of the veterans here may actually remember. A poet who aged and went a little crazy, but was always on the scene and finally died. And he's described here, right, in these two sonnet-length pieces of a poem. It's called A Blue Bicycle. 1. This poet died twice. His work was known a little, just in our town for a short while, and then nowhere at all. His death remained a fact to almost no one, although gradually, year by year, some lovers of poetry did hear that the person corresponding to some poems they had heard once from the microphone in a bar and couldn't remember the existence, not the words of, was no more. Others also recalled the poems once in a while, not thinking to wonder why they never saw the man, if he was dead or only alive but elsewhere. In the latter case, you could say, this poet had not died even once. Elsewhere or dead, what's the difference? So, let's call it elsewhere. Thanks. This poet, he was interrupted by applause. Only good kind of interruption, right? If it happened during sex. Okay. This poet died once. His work remained unknown, except to some friends and frequenters of the bars where poetry, including his, used to be read aloud. Where, over years, they'd watched him getting poorer and poorer, more and more weird. I used to see him pedaling his old stiff, rusted bicycle, still bearing some flecks of the blue enamel, along College Street in the rain in a dirty trench coat, same coat for years, decades. He developed theories on famous disasters and was writing an endless novel, they say. I don't know about what or if anyone did. And then he died. I heard it long after from his friends. I was a peripheral one. And sometimes in a bar, I still hear him mention, the way you mention a thing you can't see, touch, or remember, yet you know it as a certain hole in your world. His poems now were nothing but him along with his blue bicycle, raincoat, and the room he must have had somewhere, with doubtless reams of more poems. He was dead. No one I know knows where the poems went. And this is my last poem. This is one I think really, Lillian's beautiful words really made me sort of think of this poem. So I'm out wandering around in the streets and there's a moon out, right? So that's what's happening in this poem. Interior peace. Here I'm happy under the peaceful moon, between half and full, sailing so slow, it takes an hour to cross the inches between the 70th stories of two towers. I am happy down here and also up there, where my eyes live on the moon and with her. With the moon, as science tells me definitively she is not, but she is. Soon there will be camps and mines up there, and my soul will sing the obeyed of the moon beside the rhythm of drills, just like it does now in the Arabian deserts and in stunted Texas, smallest state of mind in the Union. Here I'm happy, and my heart in my eyes lives in the immense, while others enviously, vengefully prove how it cannot be so, and in their constantly dismantled and constructed place, children sleep against the walls of thin marble veneer, and I step over them, here in the region of big companies and drug zombies, pain and arrogance squeezing the neck of my peace, shaking its spine, shouting, "Spend your life in lament until your eyes bleed this place's blind sorrow." Thanks. Sit down right here to listen to Elliott Clarke.
Okay.
It just a move like coconut water, roast breadfruit and banana.
Yay!
Yeah,
That's cool.
that's smooth. It just smooth the runs through language. All right, thank you all. Can we get another round of applause? Woo! Boy, that poem about the poet and his blue bicycle, just the status. Oh man, you just captured that and rolled it up and brought it to us. Thank you for that. Wherever his spirit is, I hope he's still writing poetry and but being nurtured and maybe becoming a flower or a tree or yeah.
I think we're still reading his poetry.
Yeah, right. We should still read it, yeah. So, it is my pleasure to introduce to you and help me welcome our fourth Poet Laureate of Toronto, 2012 to 2015, and the 7th Parliamentary Canadian Poet Laureate, 2016 to 2017, George Elliott Clarke. I got a few more words for him. He hails from Windsor, Nova Scotia. As of 1960, Clarke is also a a first. It says pioneer here, but definitely a trailblazer, scholar of African and Canadian literature with 2 major tomes to his credit. This is Home, Mapping African Canadian Literature, 202, and Directions Home. Approaches to African Canadian Literature, 2012. He's a professor of English at the University of Toronto. He taught at Duke, McGill, University of British Columbia, and Harvard, and we couldn't afford him at OCAD. He holds numerous honorary doctorate. That's in lieu of paying him. Plus appointments to the Order of Nova Scotia, the Order of Canada, at the rank of officer. He's also a fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. His recognition include Rockefeller Foundation Bellagio Center Fellowship, Magazine Gold Award for Poetry, the Premio Poesis Romania, the Eric Offer Book Award for Poetry International Fellow Poet of the Year, Encyclopedia Poetry School 219. George is just an international traveler, and I'll go on and recognize internationally all over the world. He brought me to Harvard University to give a talk, Reloading the Canon. I've known George for many years, and he's been a major influence, not just on the Black community and Black voices, but opening up this space in Canadian literature, Canadian history, Canadian culture. George, you have 5 pages of accolades and another honorary doctorate coming up.
So your time is over.
Without further ado, just want to say, just such a pleasure to be here with you on the stage and to welcome you. And thank you so much, George.
Well, yes. Where to start? Well, it's actually very simple. And I really want to thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of today's event. Really, it's a great honor to follow Lillian and Al, 2 formidable poets, tremendous poets who have altered the way we think of poetry in this country. And I also want to riff for 1 second off of Lillian's very fine poem about Yorkville in the 1960s and poetry and the burgeoning folk and then rock music scenes. And I was really happy to hear Neil Young put together with Rick James once again. Amen. That's right. We don't do that enough. Every time somebody mentions Neil Young, they should mention Rick James too, for crying out loud. But one of the names that I would have liked to have heard as well, and Lillian might very well still slip it into the poem, is Milton Acorn. And the reason why Milton Acorn comes to my mind is because of what he believed and what he preached in terms of the poetry that he put out. He was also someone who was associated with the Bohemian Embassy, along with, of course, his one-time wife, Gwendolyn McEwen. And also at the same time, I think about Milton Acorn because of his devotion to freedom of speech. And I think that's really important because it's something that is under a great deal of stress right now from lots of different categories, lots of different communities and so on. But I still believe in what Pierre Elliott Trudeau believed in his book, Approaches to Politics. And if you haven't read it, you gotta read it because it's a real short and accessible manual on liberalism, on the best ideas of liberalism, the ideals of liberalism. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Approaches to Politics, 1971. Chernozym de la Politique, and to give it the French title. And what I put together from all this, Milton Acorn, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the great generation of the 1960s. People talk about the generation that fought World War II, that fought against fascism and Nazism as being the greatest generation. Yes, they were. But I want to stand up for the generation of the 1960s who fought for emancipation of women, who fought for liberation of black people, who fought for an end to the Vietnam War, and who succeeded. I want to support the great slogan that came out in the 1960s, which is still relevant today, which is, I'm happy to say,
Make love, not war.
make love, not war. Make love, not war. Make love, not war. Make love, not war. Thank you. And on that note, I begin my reading. And I'm going to begin by reading a piece which we can apply to the Day of Reconciliation coming up on Monday. And it's a poem titled For the Murdered and the Missing, a Spiritual. And it is about murdered and missing Indigenous women. And I have a right to talk about that because I am part Cherokee. I call myself Afro-Métis. I am descended in part from Emma Gibson, a Cherokee woman in Nova Scotia. So I lay claim to that identity as I always have. So here's the poem. It's actually a chant more than it is a poem. Someone's guilty of 1,000,000 crimes, blood on his hands, death on his mind, to send my sister away, away, to put my mama in an unmarked grave. Why she got to be murdered? Why she got to go missing? This land is hers, so I heard. All the saints are insisting. Someone's gotta sink in hell and rot. Dumped bones in bush or parking lot. Disappeared my auntie, saw her die. Exiled my daughter, served her misery. Why she got to be missing? Why she got to be murdered? Why I hear justice hissing like a viper in a graveyard. Someone's papa mapped a trail of tears. Someone's son paved a highway of tears. Why my sister gotta stumble down? Why my mama gotta tumble down? Why she got to go missing? Why she got to be murdered? Indigenous insisting justice for our massacred. Justice for our massacred. Someone's flag looks like blood on snow. Someone's history's a damn crime show to hurt my daughter. So she weep to wound my auntie while she sleep. Why she got to be murdered? Why she got to go missing? Martyred in mud smeared from the paw to Nipissing. Someone's guilty of 1,000,000 crimes from 5 centuries back down to next time. Ain't sorry to little sister rape or put my mama in her too soon grave. Why she got to be murdered? Why she got to be missing? Ain't all government alert to sins of commission? Why don't Parliament just wail? How can this Parliament fail? Gotta have justice insisting. No more murdered, no more missing, no more homicide, suicide, genocide, those screaming words that none can hide. No more trails and highways of tears. No more families cramming each a hearse. Time to put the guilty where they belong, on trial in jail by the end of this song. Why she got to go missing? Why she got to be murdered? Indigenous insisting justice for our massacred. Justice for our massacred. Justice, 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 justice for our massacred. Why she got to go missing? the same. Why she got to be murdered? Next poem from the same book called J'accuse, and I am following Émile Zola in his defense of Alfred Dreyfus in 1898 in France, in his attempt to speak back truth to power the entire French government of the late 19th century, at some personal cost to himself. So I want to read this poem in homage to Zola and also Milton Acorn. This is number 34, Latin, and actually the theme of this poem, which is actually the theme of the entire book, is about the necessity to always be able to speak your truth, to always be able to address what you feel needs to be addressed. Here's the poem. But to that tumultuous panic, I was incognizant. For moonlight chopped at my silhouette on my grape splattered bib of earth with a swap of blush, rosato, plus mythic giblets, add-on splashes of wet vino and a dash of anisette of wallet-shattering worth, at spiffy locanda Montine Antico, where iffy pound had sought shelter from suspicion. Was not the right thing left for Ezra Pound to do, only to confess, to figure the signature luminary professing, blaring his ineffaceable fascism, echoing a technique of candor compatible with his truth, tabulating how the swastika caught him taut in its black tarantula tentacles? Truly was this cone telegraphed, compassed by the Pisan, partisan cantos, nothing half-assed. Meanwhile, I limped, a gimp, about that pirate marsh, Venice, cuttlefish ink dark, scuttling, outfitted with harsh cephalexin and indomethacin, parked in my jaw, swallowed with phlegm. And pound one more, the poet exemplar since Ovid, since Lorca, since Mandelstam, since BC before COVID, since Malcolm X, since Aesop, Ethiop, since Sappho, since Juvenal, since Wilde, since Sod, since Cicero, since Dante, since Moaz, since Riel, since Euripides, since Sarajevo, since Brodsky, since Socrates, since Khashoggi, since Celine, since Oud el-Wahid, since Angela, since Gramsci, since Eddie Said, since Neruda, since Akhmatova, since Zola, to run afoul of regime after regime of attempted regimen of the soul. My time is up. So I'm going to read just a very, very brief poem from this. Look, Lillian warned you already about what happens when you get control of the microphone for just a couple minutes. But this is truly going to be a very, very short poem, and I think I should finish up with this because of some of the heavier topics I wanted to share with you today. So here it is. As soon as I put my eyes on it, yes, I found it, and it's really short. April Rain is the title. You can see it for yourself. It's only 12 lines, really short. It's a love poem, for crying out loud. Make love, not war. April Rain. Rain is one with April. How could you forget how our wet lips met? We kissed against the chill. You shivered in your coat as I clutched you close and kissed your cool nose and your wet lips and throat. Once we knew fire and chill you've forgotten now, but I recall though each rainfall in April. I want to thank you. A big shout out. Chris Jones in the house. Chris Jones in the house.
Thank you so much. so much, George. Yeah, one more time for George. Okay, we got about 6 minutes going here, so we can probably get in 2 questions, but this is more a conversation. I'll start out, I'll start from the beginning, and then if you have a question too, I'll actually drop 2-part questions. So, I just want to ask you, for people here, what did you recognize about poetry before you understood the word poetry? What was calling to you, and when did you fall into poetry?
That's a hard one, so you take it.
Oh no, actually, it's a really great question, but I can answer it succinctly. At age 15, 1975, I thought it would be a good idea to try to be popular in high school. I was supposed to enter grade 10 in Halifax. And my choice, because I couldn't sing, I couldn't dance, I didn't play any instruments, and I wasn't good at basketball or football. I was very good at track and field, but that wasn't going to get me much attention in high school. So I thought, I'm going to write songs, just the words, just lyrics. I'm going to write lyrics. So I started out, I can tell you the exact day, July 1, Dominion Day as it was then, Canada Day, 1975. I sat down and took up some colored markers and began to write what I call songs. And in order to become a better songwriter, I was reading books about how to become a better songwriter, and they all said, you got to be a poet. If you're going to be a songwriter, you got to be a poet. So that got me into listening to Bob Dylan, and of course Leonard Cohen, and Neil Young, and of course all the great blues singers and their verses from the 1930s and so on. So that's how it happened, from song to poetry. So,
Can you give us your first 2 lines?
oh my golly!
James!
I like that author. Actually, the first thing I wrote was a ripoff of David Bowie. And one of his, like the Spider from Mars album was out at that time. And I'm only 15, so I'm right into everything. You know, I'm listening to David Bowie's Golden Years and all that kind of stuff on the radio, Elton John, but then also the Ohio Players and Kool and the Gang, and of course the great George Clinton, Chocolate City. So. Yeah, I can't give you those first 2 lines, but I can tell you that it was real teenage stuff.
All right, Al.
Well, you know, I think that looking back, I always feel that children's rhymes, things that my parents said to me, recited to me, whether they made them up or read them, and things like hearing the Psalms in church and parts of the Catholic liturgy, retrospectively were poetry that I had and really liked and was fascinated by before I was able to read. So I always am grateful to that because I feel I recapitulate in myself the history of mankind in which poetry is first an illiterature. There is not the technology of words, and it belongs to the world in which you hear, remember, and speak back. And how it lasts, if it does last, is a mystery. We find today replicated in things like music, for instance, in that, you know, on Friday night in the bar you hear it, and then you hear it on a record if that band becomes successful, but it's not the same thing, you know. But, you know, when I learned to read, I learned to read fast, and so by the end of first grade I was already reading pretty sophisticatedly. So I got interested in Edgar Allan Poe, and in the 3rd grade I wanted to sneak away from the Cub Scout meeting I was supposed to be attending and go to the library to see if I could find some more Poe stories. And I got a big, you know, multi-volume book, and you know, like you start reading from the back, and that was his poems. He never wrote many poems, but I started reading his poems, and I was fascinated. And from that time, towards the end of the 3rd grade, I wanted to be a poet, and I've never wanted to be anything else since. How old are you? In the 3rd grade, 9 years old or something like that.
All right, so I'll share with you some of my first experiences too. It's very interesting that it's diverse for all of us. Well, my sense of it came from language. And actually, I was the 5th of 10 children. I was, before the other 5 came through, our parents would leave me with my other 4 sisters when they go into the big city. And they would sing to me. And they would hug me and write, and just talk stories to me. So it's really a deep pleasure and pleasurable experience for me to hear the voice and to hear the voice singing and talking. And later on, just my family and cousins around. We lived with a lot of family. My grandmother had 18 children, aunts, uncles, a whole bunch of us. And never went to high school. My father's children, myself, was the first one to go to high school. And just to hear them talking and enjoying themselves and talk about language and things and nice, it was just so pleasurable to hear that I took that with me. And then in church, I wrote my first poem, and the church went wild. Oh yeah. And I, like you, I never wanted to leave that feeling. Bicycle of one light, care of 2 lights. I have 3 lights in my heart. One for my mother, one for my father, one for Jesus. And it was the hallelujah up and down the street. Yeah. I was frightened and confused and happy, and then everybody else looked at me differently afterwards. And I never gave up that feeling. I'm always, that's going on. So just wanted to share that with you.
It reminds me, there's a beautiful essay called From the Women in the Kitchen by the American novelist Paul Marshall. And she says when she was a kid, she discovered a library, and she would go down there, she was reading Dickens and Trollope, and she was just fascinated. And then she began to realize that the women telling her stories out in the kitchen who would gather, they were Caribbean people, were also giving her another language, and then she could mix these things.
Yeah. And that was simply when you went to high school, except they were telling you that my language from church and school and my family was not good. That was going to keep me back. So I had to speak the Queens and so our time is out. Okay, any last word? I got a 0 there.
Yeah.
Out of 100? A last word?
0 to 100 in 0.4 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, I just think that that's a wonderful reflection, just to talk about poetry that way. I think, the last thing I'd say is adding stories. I love what George says about music and the musicians who were big in the 70s when he was a kid. And I think of a story that Smokey Robinson told about how he was an unsuccessful songwriter, and then he talked to the great Harvey Fuqua of the Moonglows, and Harvey told him, "You've got to put a story into your song, right?" Is that anything
I think that I do remember the first 2 lines of the very first poem that I ever constructed. I was waiting for a bus on Barrington Street with my father. This would have been around 1963, so I was 3 years old. And I remember making up this ridiculous rhyme as we were waiting for the bus to come along. And here it is. And it actually has a tune to it, which I still remember 61 years later, being 64. So forgive me, but remember, this is from a 3-year-old. We saw Esau flying down the street, smelling his feet, smelling his feet. We saw Esau flying down the street, smelling his feet, smelling his feet. So there you go.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Stay tuned for some other great poets. We're going to keep it going. Maybe just so 1 minute break, and we're gonna keep it going. So, you know.
Hey, how are you?
So if you want to buy books, take a poet home. You can take them home, take them to bed. Like next door, you can just go next door and talk to the authors as they leave, or get a signed book, buy a book.